Long ago, in a quiet village surrounded by dry fields and narrow mud roads, lived a farmer named Raghav. His days began before the sun rose and ended long after it disappeared behind the trees. Life had never been kind to him, but it was familiar. And familiarity, he believed, was enough. Raghav owned two animals that were tied near the same wooden shed, a strong bull named Veer and a donkey called Chintu. They drank from the same bucket, slept under the same roof, and woke up to the same morning bell. Yet their lives followed very different paths. Veer, the bull, carried the real burden of the farm. Every morning, ropes were tied tightly around his neck, and he was led to the fields. From sunrise to sunset, he pulled heavy plows through stubborn soil. In the summer, heat burned his skin until sweat soaked his body. During the rains, mud clung to his legs, making each step heavier than the last. In winter, cold winds cut deep, yet the work never stopped. Still, Veer never complained. At least, not at first. Chintu, the donkey, worked too, but his tasks were lighter. Carrying small bundles of firewood, sacks of grain, or water pots from one place to another. Once his job was done, he was allowed to rest. He would sit calmly under a tree, chewing grass slowly, enjoying the breeze while watching the clouds move across the sky. Every evening, Veer returned from the fields exhausted. His legs trembled, his breathing was heavy, and his body ached in places he didn't even know existed. And every evening, he saw the same sight, Chintu resting peacefully. At first, Veer ignored it. This is just life, he told himself. But days turned into weeks. Weeks into years. Slowly, a silent question began to grow inside his mind. Why him, and not me? One night, when the village was asleep and only the sound of crickets filled the air, Veer finally spoke. "Brother," he said quietly, "don't you ever feel lucky?" Chintu looked up, surprised. "Lucky? In what way?" "You work a little and rest a lot," Veer said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "I give everything I have every day. My strength, my body, my time. Yet my life is only work and pain." Chintu stayed silent for a moment. He had seen Veer suffer. He had heard his breathing at night, rough and tired. "This is the role given to us," Chintu replied carefully. "Some pull, some carry. Life isn't always fair." Veer lowered his head. "But is it wrong to want comfort? Just for once?" Chintu hesitated. He knew his next words carried danger. "There might be a way," he said slowly. "If you act weak, just for a day or two, Raghav may feel pity and let you rest." Veer's ears lifted. "You mean, no work?" "Yes," Chintu replied, "but only briefly. Too much comfort invites trouble." Veer nodded, but his mind had already drifted far away, toward dreams of rest, ease, and freedom from pain. That night, he slept with hope in his heart. The next morning, Veer refused to stand properly. He moved slowly, stumbled, and lowered his head as if sick. Raghav noticed immediately. "Poor soul," the farmer said softly. "You look unwell today. Rest." For the first time in years, Veer stayed behind while the fields waited. One day of rest felt like heaven. But comfort has a way of whispering dangerous promises. The second morning arrived quietly, but something inside Veer had already changed. He opened his eyes and felt no pain in his muscles, no burning in his legs. For the first time in years, his body felt light. The memory of yesterday's rest filled him with warmth. One more day, he thought. Just one more. As Raghav approached the shed, Veer slowly lowered himself again, breathing heavily, pretending his strength had vanished overnight. He bent his legs awkwardly and avoided eye contact, acting weaker than before. Raghav stopped. Yesterday, his face had shown concern. Today, there was only silence. He watched Veer carefully, his eyes moving from the bull's steady breathing to his clear eyes. No fever. No wounds. Just stillness. Raghav muttered under his breath. Without saying a word, he untied Chintu instead. That day, the donkey carried heavier loads than usual. His back ached, and his legs trembled under the unfamiliar pressure. As he passed by the shed, he looked at Veer with worried eyes. That night, under the dim moonlight, Chintu spoke again. "Brother, you must return to work tomorrow," he said urgently. "Humans are not foolish. They notice patterns." Veer snorted softly. "I have given my whole life to labor. Is asking for rest a crime?" "It becomes a mistake," Chintu replied, "when rest turns into habit." Veer turned away. His heart had already chosen comfort over caution. The third morning came. Veer didn't even try to look convincing this time. He simply lay down, unmoving, confident that the farmer would again feel pity. But Raghav didn't speak. He didn't shout. He didn't show anger. He walked away. An hour later, unfamiliar footsteps echoed through the yard. Veer lifted his head slightly and saw a stranger standing beside Raghav. The man's clothes were stained dark, and his eyes held a cold sharpness that made Veer's chest tighten. Raghav pointed toward Veer. "This one," he said. A rope was brought. Veer's heart began to pound. Another day of rest, he tried to convince himself as the rope tightened around his neck. But something felt wrong. The air smelled different, sharp and metallic. As they walked away from the shed, Veer looked back desperately. Chintu stood frozen, his eyes wide with fear. "Brother!" Chintu called out. "I warned you." The path they followed was not toward the fields. With every step, Veer's confidence crumbled. Images flooded his mind, the plowed fields, the long days of labor, the pain he once hated. Now, he would give anything to feel that pain again. They stopped near a low building at the edge of the village. Inside, Veer saw knives hanging, red-stained floors, and other animals that never returned home. The truth struck him like lightning. This was not rest. This was replacement. Veer tried to resist. He pulled against the rope, his hooves digging into the ground. His eyes pleaded, his breath shook, but no sound could change what had already been decided. Comfort had labeled him useless. And useless things, in the human world, are removed. Days later, Raghav bought a new bull, younger, stronger, obedient. The fields were plowed again. The village routine continued as if nothing had happened. Only Chintu knew the cost of comfort. Every evening, he stood alone near the shed, staring at the empty space where Veer once rested. The silence was heavier than words. He understood now. Hard work had protected Veer. Avoiding it had erased him. The shed felt emptier than ever. Chintu stood alone, staring at the spot where Veer used to lie every night. The rope that once tied them side by side now hung loose, swinging gently in the wind. No heavy breathing. No tired sighs. Only silence. For the first time, Chintu understood something painful. Safety is often mistaken for suffering. The new bull arrived within days. He was young, muscular, and full of energy. His eyes were sharp, and his steps were confident. Raghav named him Bolram. Without delay, Bolram was taken to the fields, just as Veer once had been. Chintu watched closely. Bolram worked hard. Harder than Veer ever did in his early days. He pulled the plow without hesitation, without complaint. And yet, there was fear in his movements, the fear of being watched, measured, judged. That fear kept him obedient. One evening, Bolram spoke for the first time. "Where is the old bull?" he asked quietly. Chintu hesitated. How do you explain disappearance to someone who believes effort guarantees survival? He rested too much, Chintu finally said. Bolram frowned. Rest is bad. No, Chintu replied softly. But being seen as unnecessary is. The words settled heavily between them. Days passed. Chintu noticed something unsettling. Raghav had begun watching everyone more closely, weighing effort, comparing usefulness, calculating value. The farmer was not cruel. He was practical. And practicality has no space for emotion. Chintu realized that Veer's mistake wasn't wanting comfort, it was forgetting his value. One afternoon, as Chintu carried water, he overheard Raghav speaking to another farmer. Animals are like tools, Raghav said. The moment they stop working, they become a burden. Those words cut deeper than any knife. That night, Chintu couldn't sleep. Fear wrapped around his thoughts. If Veer, strong and loyal, could disappear, then what chance did he have? For the first time, comfort scared him. The next morning, Chintu did something unexpected. He stepped forward before being called. He carried heavier loads than usual. He moved faster. He worked longer. His back screamed in pain, but he didn't slow down. Raghav noticed. He always did. From that day on, Chintu's role changed. He was no longer just the resting donkey. He became reliable. Necessary. But safety came with a price. The more Chintu worked, the less time he had to think. And thinking, he realized, was dangerous, because it reminded him of Veer. One evening, Bolram collapsed in the field, his legs shaking. He had pushed himself too hard. Raghav frowned but did not panic. He will recover, he said calmly. Chintu watched, his heart heavy. This was the cycle. Work, worth, survival. No pauses allowed. That night, Bolram whispered, "Is this how it ends for all of us?" Chintu looked at the sky, searching for an answer that didn't exist. No, he lied gently. As long as we are useful. The lie tasted bitter. Because deep down, Chintu knew the truth, usefulness is temporary. Time passed. Chintu aged. His steps slowed. His eyes lost their shine. One morning, he struggled to lift a sack that once felt light. Raghav noticed. Not with anger. With calculation. Chintu's heart raced. Veer's memory flashed before him. The rope. The stranger. The smell of metal. Fear returned, stronger than ever. That night, Chintu stood awake, realizing something terrifying. Comfort didn't destroy Veer alone. It created a system where fear replaced compassion. And fear, once born, never leaves. Time moved forward, but it left heavy marks behind. Chintu's steps were no longer quick. His back curved slightly, and his breathing grew louder with every load he carried. Once, rest had been his comfort. Now, rest was his greatest fear. He had learned the rule too well: pause too long, and you disappear. Raghav didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He didn't need to. His silence was enough. Every glance felt like a test. Every slow movement felt like a failure. Bolram, the new bull, worked endlessly. He never pretended to be tired. He never slowed down. But even his strength had limits. Small wounds began to appear on his legs. His eyes lost their spark. One evening, Bolram collapsed again, harder this time. The plow stopped. The field went quiet. Raghav approached slowly. He didn't panic. He inspected Bolram like a cracked tool. Too much strain, he said to himself. Chintu's heart pounded. He remembered that tone. That night, Chintu couldn't sleep. He stared at the stars and finally understood the full truth. This wasn't about laziness or hard work. It was about value. And value, in this world, faded with time. Fear had turned him into a machine. Work had kept him alive, but it had also taken away something precious, dignity. The next morning, something inside Chintu changed. For the first time since Veer's disappearance, Chintu slowed down on purpose. Not to pretend weakness, but to stand his ground. Raghav noticed immediately. "Move faster," he said sharply. Chintu lifted his head. His legs trembled, but his voice, quiet yet firm, carried weight. "I am tired," he said. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Raghav stared, surprised. No animal had ever said that before, not with honesty. "I have worked every day," Chintu continued. "I did not rest out of greed. I rested because my body asked me to." Silence followed. Bolram watched from the shed, his eyes wide. Raghav's expression hardened. For a moment, Chintu thought it was over. That the rope would return. That fear would win. But something unexpected happened. Raghav looked away. He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He simply walked off. That day, no stranger came. That night, Chintu lay awake, unsure whether he had survived, or merely delayed the end. Days passed. Chintu was given lighter work. Not kindness, calculation. Raghav had learned that breaking animals too fast reduced their usefulness. It wasn't mercy. But it was space. In that space, Chintu thought of Veer. Veer hadn't died because he rested once. He had died because he forgot the balance between effort and awareness. Comfort without responsibility had destroyed him. But responsibility without dignity was destroying Chintu. One evening, Bolram spoke softly. "Do you think things can change?" Chintu smiled sadly. "Only when fear stops ruling decisions." "But fear keeps us alive," Bolram replied. "Yes," Chintu said. "And it also keeps us trapped." As the moon rose, Chintu realized something powerful. True safety isn't found in endless labor or stolen comfort. It's found in knowing when to work, when to rest, and when to stand up for yourself. The system hadn't changed. But Chintu had. And sometimes, that's the beginning. The seasons changed, one after another. Summer burned the fields. Monsoon washed them clean. Winter slowed everything down. But inside the shed, something remained the same, the quiet tension between survival and fear. Chintu had grown old. His steps were careful now. His strength had faded, but his eyes carried something new, understanding. He no longer rushed to prove his worth, nor did he chase comfort blindly. He worked with awareness, rested with honesty, and spoke only when silence became dangerous. Bolram, however, was still young. Strong. Restless. He believed effort alone could save him. One cold morning, Bolram pushed himself too far. He ignored the pain in his legs, the tightness in his chest. The plow dragged heavily behind him as he stumbled again and again. Chintu watched with worry. "Stop," Chintu whispered. "You don't need to prove anything today." Bolram shook his head. "If I slow down, I become replaceable." The words echoed painfully. That was Veer's fear. That was Chintu's fear. That was the fear that ruled them all. By evening, Bolram collapsed, this time unable to stand. Raghav arrived, his face unreadable. He examined Bolram slowly, thoughtfully. Then he looked at Chintu, old, thin, but steady. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Raghav sighed. He won't last long like this, he said. Chintu braced himself. But instead of calling for a rope, Raghav did something unexpected. He untied Bolram and let him rest. Not out of kindness. Out of learning. Time had taught the farmer a lesson too. Replacing everything came at a cost. That night, Bolram slept peacefully for the first time since arriving. Chintu looked at the sky and felt something loosen inside his chest. Veer's sacrifice had not been meaningless. Days later, Chintu felt his body failing. His legs shook even while standing. He knew the end was closer now, not because of rest, but because of time. That evening, he stood beside Bolram and spoke softly. Listen carefully, he said. Work gives you value, but wisdom gives you life. Never chase comfort by escaping responsibility, and never accept responsibility that destroys your soul. Bolram nodded, eyes heavy with emotion. When you stop working completely, you are forgotten, Chintu continued. But when you forget why you are working, you are already lost. That night, Chintu lay down beside the shed, exactly where Veer once rested. And in his final moments, there was no fear. No regret. Only clarity. By morning, Chintu did not rise. Raghav stood quietly for a long time. No rope came. No stranger was called. The farmer buried Chintu himself, under the tree where he once rested peacefully. The fields continued. Life continued. But something had changed. Bolram worked with balance now. He rested when needed. And he never forgot Chintu, or Veer. Because comfort did not kill Veer alone. Blind comfort did. Fear did. And forgetting one's worth did.